training and being a trainer and being a player interconnect skill wise. So in your opinion, maybe as a trainer or as a player here, what do you think is the most valuable skill in basketball?
That's a good question. I think that my go-to for this is always shooting the basketball, because I think at the end of the day, if you can put the ball in the basket, first of all, it's the hardest thing to do, right? Like if I start training a player and they already can shoot the ball, like I'm so happy about that, because that's the hardest part of it, is actually being able to shoot the basketball consistently. And so, for me, I think that's the first part, is like, if you can put the ball in the basket, it can overcome a lot, right? You can play a pretty bad game where you miss a couple layups and, you give up a few shots on defense and you don't get back in transition, you turn the ball over. But like at the end of the day, if you put the ball in the basket, you make a bunch of shots, you're going to be in the game, right? You're going to be in the game. So I think that's the number one thing. If you just have if you have a team full of shot makers, you're probably going to be pretty good. So for me, it's like every team can use a guy who can put the ball in the basket. And that's usually where it starts. Like, okay, how do we get really good at consistently putting the ball in the basket? And then once you have that, everything else opens up, because if you can shoot the ball, they have to play you differently, which opens up, opportunities for you to drive more. Obviously, it puts more pressure on help defense to worry about you, your own defender, which frees up your teammates as well. So if you can get good at that, put the ball in the basket, not only are you knocking out the hardest part of basketball, but probably the most valuable part as well, because of everything else that it impacts.
Yeah, it's kind of more of my answer too. I feel like, right, it starts opening everything up for offense and defensive ends. And so when it comes to training basketball skills, like your shooting and all the other ones, I've always found it hard to train by myself. I've seen a lot recently about, especially on social media and online, about challenging yourself in workouts. So as a trainer who's played basketball a lot longer than me, what do you think is important when it comes to working out by yourself?
So, when it comes to working out by yourself, like I think it really is that. It's finding ways to challenge yourself. Obviously, you're not going to always have access to defense. And I think ultimately the most ideal way to train is with defense, like if you can. But that doesn't mean that it's the only way to do things. And obviously, things aren't always going to be perfect, right? So if you can find an environment where you're always just training or playing against players who are your skill level a little bit better, you're like, yeah, sure, that's the best thing, but that's not real life. That's not how it always is going to be. So when you're by yourself, like, what can you still do? Finding ways to challenge yourself. So if it's like shooting, for example, right? If you're already a pretty good shooter, just going around and hitting, spot up shots from the same spot over and over again, to the point where you can kind of go on autopilot and not even think about it. You're not really challenging yourself, so there's not much growth happening. You got to find ways to kind of be right on the edge of your comfort zone. So you can do this in a lot of different ways. Obviously, you can change the type of shots that you're shooting. So maybe the most simple way is like, okay, instead of shooting high school threes, now you're shooting college threes, right? Or pro threes. So now we're challenging your ability to make shots from farther back, which will translate to it feeling a little bit easier when you move back in for your games if you're shooting at the high school line. So there's that. You can obviously change, okay, maybe I move into my shots, maybe I'm relocating up the wing or down to the corner, or backpedaling into my shots. And now you're adding a element of momentum to your shooting now. One of my favorite ways to train shooting is just by mixing up shots. So using like a variable approach, meaning instead of a blocked approach where I'm shooting the same shot over and over and over again, if I use this varied approach, I'm now shooting different shots one after the other. So maybe my first shot is going to be just a catch and shoot three, and then my next shot's going to be a pull up off the dribble, and then my next shot's going to be a relocation into a three. And I'm forcing my body to now adapt to each shot, which is much more game-like, right? Because you might shoot a shot on the wing, and then you got to go down and play defense. And the next possession, maybe you shoot a shot at the elbow, right? Or you shoot a shot in the corner. You're probably going to shoot at different spots, one after the other. So if we can train our ability to be able to handle that and adapt from one shot to the other, it's going to translate to you making more shots in games. So that's a shooting example. And I think that's a great way players can challenge themselves by themselves. We talk about like ball handling. I think a great way to do that is just by freestyling and trying different things. See if you can challenge yourself with a different freestyle and say, okay, can I work on my pace right here? Like I'm going to work on, okay, 3 dribbles are going to be at 100%, and then I'm going to raise up and I'm going to go 50% for 3 dribbles. Different things like that, I think, can be big for challenging yourself. And then for finishing, it's the same way. So how can I challenge my finishing? Well, on my touch. So I'm trying to hit different spots on the backboard with my finishes. Maybe I'm trying to work on my floaters. I'm only going to count reps where I hit all net on my floaters to really challenge my precision on that. So really, it's just about finding what you want to work on, and then how can I make it as harder on myself so that it's a challenge for me, and then I'm a little bit uncomfortable. And if you do that consistently, you're going to get better.
Thanks for checking out today's podcast clip. I'm Josh from Josh Smaller Basketball, and for the full interview, click here.